What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and in today's episode of the fighting game tutorial series we are going to be going over match history part 2, which is going to allow us to display UI about our previous matches. So it's going to store the characters that we played as, the type of match that it was, and who won that match. So if we go back and go into a mode and actually finish this match, which I'll do very quickly, this data will populate. Now we don't have it saving yet, that's the next thing on our agenda, so we will have to actually do this at the start of every launch if we want to see any data in our player profile for the match history. Of course, after that we will be adding it to our player profile widget. That allows us to actually access it within the player profile widget without doing any sort of hacky behavior. Once we're at the main menu, we can go back into the player profile, and this time the match history should have data, and you can see that it does. So what we have here is a row that says versus, and this is team 1 and this is team 2. It's showing all the characters that were involved on each team as well as which team won. So Mutant was involved on each team. This was a solos match, and we did not have a second or third character on either team, so they're blank. The team that won the match is highlighted in green, but the team that lost the match is highlighted in red. Of course, you can make this look however you want, but as long as we can get the data across from our match history entry array into this widget, we'll know we've done this episode correctly. If you'd like to get caught up in the series before checking out this episode, you can see how we've done every episode of the fighting game tutorial series to date, and that playlist stays current so you can follow that along as you continue to progress in your own project. I'll link the iCard for that playlist right here in the top right corner of your screen. Alternatively, if you don't care about the entire series and you only care about the match history, I do recommend you watch the previous episode right here in the top right corner of your screen. That is where we implemented the actual C++ behavior for match history. So we're going to need both these episodes to obtain this actual result that we have here for our match history system. So with that out of the way, we can go ahead and get started on today's episode. This is a code and blueprint tutorial series, although we're going to be doing everything in the blueprints today, as we're going to be creating the widget, adding it to the player profile, and determining how we want it to look. First thing we're going to need is 2 new widgets. We're going to make a widget for the individual entry of match history, and then we're going to make one for the overall match history widget. So if we go to our blueprints and go to widgets and go to menus, I'm going to add 2 new ones. Add user interface widget blueprint. This series is supported in UE4 and UE5. If you're in UE4, that would have been enough to create your widget. In UE5, you have to pick your parent widget. Using the standard user widget here is perfectly fine. Unless you have one that you want to use, this will work, so just go ahead and select that. Again, I've done this twice. The first one is called match history, and the second one is called match history tile. Go ahead and create both of those and then open them up. We will start in the match history tile. So the match history tile is one individual row, or what I'm calling a tile, of our overall match history. So this is going to represent a singular match that we have in our history. So starting out, we have a canvas panel. If you're in Unreal Engine 4, this canvas panel will be generated for you by default, but if you're not and you're in Unreal Engine 5, you don't actually need this canvas panel. I went ahead and added one anyway just to stay consistent. To add one, you can simply search in your palette for canvas panel and drag it into the root element of the widget. I actually added another canvas panel after this because this first canvas panel is the size of the screen by default. So by adding another canvas panel, I'm picking the size that I actually want to display this individual tile to the screen as. So I'm saying this is the maximum amount of space that this tile can take up. For the first canvas panel, everything is left as default. You don't have to change anything at all. For the second canvas panel, I have adjusted my anchors and size. That way I can get the appearance that I want. So for the anchor, I actually have this top fill section here. Fill the horizontal part of the screen, but not the vertical part of the screen. Then you can choose your offsets and sizes. For me, the only thing I wanted to change was my size Y. That way I could determine how tall it was. I made that an arbitrary value of 180, just because I thought that looked good. I also made the Z order -1, but using it as 0 is perfectly fine here because we have a background image that we're going to be applying later. So there's our 2 canvas panels. Next thing we're going to add is our overlay. So this is an image, so you can just go to common image and drag it into your canvas panel. I called this one team 1 overlay and set it to be a variable. So this is going to be used to determine if we won or lost the match. It's going to be green if we won, red if we lost. But again, let's go into the horizontal box first so that we know proportions and sizes to set this. So now we want a horizontal box. Horizontal box. You can drag this into the canvas panel. It should not be a child of Team 1 overlay. They should be on the same hierarchy level. This is just a basic horizontal box. The only thing I changed here is my position and size of it, because I wanted to determine how much space the individual character icons were going to take up for each team. So in this horizontal box, I have the standard anchor of top left being used, and these are my positions and sizes. Inside of this horizontal box, however, is where I added the actual images for each of the icons, or each of the characters on a team. So I'm going to add 3 images to this horizontal box. Just drag them into it, and you'll see I have character 3, team 1 image, character 2, team 1 image, and character 1, team 1 image. That's from left to right. It's because horizontal boxes will automatically put the first element in the left and the next elements to the right of that. I wanted the character closest to the versus text to be the first character, middle character to be the second, and farthest character to be the third. Now for each one of these images, I've set the size to be fill so that they all take up the same amount of space within the horizontal box. Additionally, I've added 10 padding on the right section of character 3 team 1 image, character 2 team 1 image, as I wanted there to be a little bit of space between each image. I didn't want the character images to be directly up against each other, so that's what the padding is for. The character 1 team 1 image doesn't really need it because I don't need padding from the other images that way. Character 3 and character 2 have already handled that. I didn't change anything else, so feel free to look at my settings for the images. Make sure each one of these images are variables, because we are going to need to set their brush in the graph based on the character that participated on that team in the match. Additionally, here's my horizontal box defaults. I didn't show you the whole thing, so I apologize. But you can see it's defaults other than the sizes and positions. Now let's go back to Team 1 overlay because we're ready to make this the proper size. I have my positions here based on this horizontal box because I wanted it to cover the horizontal box, including the spaces between and above and below. So for my case, what I wanted to do was make it slightly bigger, specifically about 5 units bigger on the left, right, top, and bottom. So I took the sizes of my horizontal box, 550 and 150. I added 10 to those values on my overlay image. So I made the size X 560 and the size Y 160 because I want 5 units on left and right and 5 units on top and bottom for a total of 10 units on each axis, X and Y. However, to offset that properly, I also have to move the X and Y position by 5 units. So I take my X and Y position of my horizontal box, which is 25 and 15, go to my overlay and subtract 5 from those values, so I have 20 and 10. That will make a nice little border effect with fill in the middle as well for my horizontal box. Then after the horizontal box, I have just a regular versus text. This is just a text widget here in common. It is not part of either horizontal box. It does not need to be a variable because I don't intend on changing the text. I anchored it to the center, because this anchor is going to be the center of the parent widget, which is the canvas panel. So the very center of this canvas panel is where I want this text to be. I did not need to change the position at all. I made it the size that I felt was appropriate for this text, both X and Y. The alignment of 0.5 and 0.5 because I want the origin point of the text widget to be in the center, not the top left like the default. So I want both of these to be 0.5. For the text itself, I just wrote verses, but of course you can write whatever you want. Here are my font settings. You don't have to follow that, obviously. Justification centered. Otherwise, it will be aligned on the left or right side, which is fine if you want that, but I want it centered. There's the rest of my settings. At this point, we have the Team 2 overlay, which is going to be basically the exact same as the Team 1 overlay. Also, I want to quickly go back to Team 1 overlay and make sure that the Z order is -1 here, not 0, because I do want it to appear behind my character images. You'll notice their Z order of the overall horizontal box is 0. So all these horizontal box children are 0 For this image to appear behind it, we need it to be at least -1. For the Team 2 overlay, we want to do the same thing. So this time we can kind of plan it out ahead of time if you'd like. So I'm going to anchor my horizontal box and my overlay image to the top right this time instead of top left. Makes the math pretty easy. I can essentially take all the values I had in my Team 1 overlay and just use them. So Team 1 overlay, position was 20 and 10. Size was 560 and 160. If I go to my Team 2 overlay, you'll see I have 20 and 10, 560 and 160. The X position is going to be -20 because remember we are anchored to the right, the top right here. So -20 is to the left. We don't want to move it +20, which would be to the right and outside of the widget. Z order is also -1 and alignment is 1 because the origin point of the Team 1 overlay was top left, so we want the origin point of the Team 2 overlay to be top right. Now at this point, I think it's important to notice I have made the overlays have a color and opacity of 1.0 for green and alpha, and 1.0 for red and alpha, but really this is just for the design view. We're going to make this representative of who won the match in the graph, so it's not really required that you do that. But if you want to see the rest of my settings for my overlay, there they are, all default values. Alright, make sure Team 2 overlay is a variable. We also have a horizontal box on this side. It's going to be the same deal. We're going to anchor it to the top right. We're going to set the position to -25 because remember, we want the overlay to have 5 units of padding on left, right, top, and bottom. So -25 for the position X, -15 for the position Y, 550 for the size X, 150 for the size Y. Alignment is going to be 1.0 again. And that's what we need for our horizontal box. Now we have our character images again. These ones are character 1 for Team 2. Character 2 for Team 2, Character 3 for Team 2. For each of these images, I've named them and made them a variable. All their sizes are set to fill with a padding of 10 on the right section, except for the last one. So the first one has padding of 10, second one has padding of 10, third one has a padding of 0. Now I'll show you what I have for them, but again, they're all defaults. This time I changed the scale to be -1. That way I could flip the actual image. So if the mutant was facing to the left, he'd now be facing to the right and vice versa. So make sure all your images follow that. So here's all my settings. Scale of X is -1. Y can be left alone. All default values, again, except the scale X is -1. So that's all the images. Lastly, I have my background here. So I have one final image, not part of either horizontal box. It's going to be my background for the entire entry. I don't need it to be a variable unless I want to change any properties of it, but in this case I don't. It can be static. I want my anchor to be full, so it will take up the entire canvas panel. I don't need any offsets or alignment changes. For my Z order, I set it to be -2, so it can be behind the overlay images as well, as they're already -1. I just made it solid black, so my color and opacity changed to 0, 0, 0, 1 for the alpha. At this point, we can go over to match history and handle that one as well. Now this widget is a lot simpler to work with, so we have our canvas panel. Again, if you're in Unreal Engine 4, this will have been here by default. I added one to stay consistent. To add one, just go search for canvas panel, drag it into the root element of the widget. This canvas panel is basic, no changes. There's my settings for it. Now what I have added is a vertical box. So vertical box, add that to our canvas panel. I've called this one Match History Tile Vertical Box because this is going to store all the individual matches for our match history. So for this one, I went ahead and anchored this to the top fill again. And here are my offsets, positions, and sizes. I'm actually going to change these two offsets to 0 as I don't really need them. I could technically use them. However, with the anchor I've chosen, they just kind of cancel out. So offsets of 0 for left and right, and my position is 125 on the Y, 800 for the size. This size is pretty important because this represents how much space is going to be taken up on the player profile. We are going to add it to our widget switcher, and so when we add it here in a few minutes, we want to make sure that the canvas panel is not going over the back button or other things we may have on this widget. Otherwise though, feel free to customize this to your liking. That's what I have. Make sure this one is a variable because we need to add to it in this widget. So speaking of, let's go ahead and add it to our player profile. So in our player profile, we have this profile widget switcher, and we had profile statistics and achievement list on it. We want to add our match history, so to do that, we can just search for our match history and just drag it into your widget switcher. I want it to be my last index, so by default it already is, and actually the behavior we have in our graph will automatically support this, so you should be able to navigate to it already. The button should highlight properly and it should bring up the proper widget. So nothing else is needed there. Now let's go into our match history widget again and fill out the behavior for it. So let's go into the graph. In here we want to create individual tiles for every entry in our array. Now we had some of this behavior in the player profiles event construct. So this is event construct. At the very end of the previous episode, we implemented all this behavior to print out and make sure our data was being obtained correctly. As you can see, I've disconnected this now. It's no longer hooked up, so it's not working. Everything up to this point is still going to be useful, so you can copy this if you want and bring it over to match history, but the rest of it can be removed. I'm going to remove all of it. Now in match history, our new widget, get the game instance, get game instance. We want to cast it to our base game instance. And in here, in the previous episode, we had this array of structures called match history entries. We want to get that and loop through it for each loop. Then we want to take the element off of the for loop and break it to grab all the individual variables. And we're going to stop here at the moment. We do need to create the individual tile widgets, but let's leave it here for a second and let's switch over to our match history tile widget. So now we go into the graph on this one and we have event construct. That's the only event we have in here. Should be here by default. If you don't have it, go ahead and search for event construct and get it on the screen. Now, all these variables you see here from character 1 team 1 image down to team 2 overlay are variables from the designer, but I've also added 4 more variables for today's episode. First one I added is team 1 winner. That's going to be set by the match history entry in our match history widget. And same with team 1 character types and team 2 character types. This last one is one that we're going to make specific to this widget. So let's start with the first 3. Is team 1 winner, basically determining is the left one going to be green or the right one. So it is a boolean with a default value of false, but make sure it is expose on spawn and instance editable. That way we can assign this value as soon as we spawn this match history tile. Then we have team 1 character types. Now this is of type E character class. So basically what class was our character, mutant, mannequin, vanguard, so on. However, it's also not a single element, but it is an array, so that we can just pass in all of the characters that were on that team. Make this one instance editable and expose on spawn as well. Then we have team 2 characters, which is the same type, E character class array, instance editable, expose on spawn. Lastly, I've made a map that is the mapping between E character class and the actual slate brush that we want to display on this image. Essentially, it's a mapping of character class to icon in the match history widget. So I called it character type to brush map. To make a variable into a map, you press the same button you would to make it into an array, but instead choose the bottom option here, map. The first type should be your E character class again. But your second type should be your slate brush, because that's how we can set an image. If you've ever seen we use set brush when we're trying to assign the brush to an image. It's a type of slate brush. So we're having a class to brush map. Now in this one, we are going to set default values because this is going to be a static map. It's not going to change. We're going to have all the icons ready for every possible character class. So you can just press plus to add elements here. And we're going to use every character class that we have. So Mannequin, Mutant, and Vanguard are my 3 options. And once I assign the class, I'm going to assign the image I want. So for the Vanguard, you can open this option up and go to Image and select the image you want. For me, it's called Vanguard Icon. And I didn't need to change anything else, but feel free to if you want. Now, for some reason, maps and blueprints are weird, and they don't let you add another instance of the default element, which is Mannequin. So you kind of have to do this in reverse order. So do Vanguard first, then add another element and do Mutant. And for Mutant, I have my Mutant profile picture. Then add one final one for Mannequin and add the Mannequin profile picture. Now once we have that map set up, we can go back to the match history widget. And we had these nodes already. Now what we want to do is create our match history tile widget, and when we do that, we will be able to pass in the relevant data. So we can call create widget. And for the class, we want our match history tile. Now the break that we just did earlier has pretty much what we need. So we have Team 1 character types goes into Team 1 character types, Team 2 character types goes into Team 2 character types, and is Team 1 winner goes into is Team 1 winner. We can ignore team mode type for now. We are going to do something with it on match history as a nice little cleanup option, but we don't have to worry about that at this specific moment. So that's how we get this node here. Now after we've created this widget, we want to go ahead and add it to our vertical box. So we're going to grab our match history tile vertical box, get it, and call add child to vertical box, and then pass in the return value of the created widget. And that's everything we have in here for our match history. This is all done within event construct. Now let's go back to match history tile and fill that behavior out. So again, we have event construct. What we want to do is loop through each of our character types arrays and grab the appropriate value from the map, then set the appropriate image to that icon. So first things first, grab Team 1 character types and loop through it with a for each loop. Now I drag the array index out into a switch statement, switch on int, and I use all possible indices, 0, 1, and 2, because we have 3 characters. So on our loop body, we use the array index to determine what character this was on the team, so either character 1, character 2, or character 3. That's what we have right here. Now, if it's index 0, we're assuming that's character 1, index 1 is character 2, index 2 is character 3. But these are all part of Team 1 because we're using the Team 1 character types array. So if it is index 0, we use character 1, Team 1 image, get it, and call set brush on it. Now grab this for character 1, 2, and 3 on Team 1. And we have to determine the brush to set for each of those. The brush to set for each of them is going to be the same though. We're going to use the array element, which is the specific character type of the index that we're on, and search the map that we made to find that class and retrieve the proper image. So if we grab our character type to brush map, get it, drag off of it, call find, then pass the array element into the section here with the class. We can drag off of this. This returns a slate brush that should be brought into each of the in-brush sections here. At the end, we want to drag off completed to do the same behavior for Team 2 character types. So completed goes into another for each loop. This time we're looping through Team 2 character types. Same switch statement, but we're changing the icons that we're dealing with, or the images we're dealing with. So we have character 1 of Team 2, character 2 of Team 2, character 3 of Team 2. We still use the array index on the switch, and we still use the array element in the map. The brush result of the find gets returned into each of these set brush operations. Then we go to completed of this for each loop, and this time we're going to set the color for the winning team and the losing team. I want to use my is Team 1 winner boolean, and I'm going to perform a select on it to determine whether we make Team 1 overlay green or red and Team 2 overlay green or red. So I drag off of is Team 1 winner and I type select. I want the standard select like this, so that the boolean is the index. Easiest way to do this is to just grab the Team 1 overlay, call set color and opacity, So now my return value from my select can go into this in color and opacity. Then see that it generates the colors right on the spot here. For the first one, if Team 1 is the winner, it's going to be green. So I can come in here, make green 1.0, for example, with an alpha of 0.8, let's say, 80% alpha. For the false, we want Team 1 overlay to be red if not the winner, so 1.0 on the red, 80% on the alpha. Then you'll see I did the exact opposite for Team 2 overlay, so I have my Team 2 overlay set color and opacity, but this time I'm setting it to be red if Team 1 winner is true, because if Team 1 won, then Team 2 lost, so Team 2 is red. Otherwise, Team 1 is not the winner, meaning that they lost, so Team 2 is the winner, so they'll be green. Of course, you can make these colors variables, that way you don't have to hard code this, but that will work for me right now. Anyway, guys, that's all I got for you today, so thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you're excited to use your match history and keep track of your actual matches in your game. If you are and it helps you, please subscribe and consider joining the Patreon, YouTube membership, or Discord subscriptions to help benefit the channel. If you had any issues with this tutorial or any of my tutorials, feel free to join the Discord community. I'd be happy to help you out, and that support is completely free, so we'll get you going so that you can keep working on your project. Otherwise, guys, that's all I got, so thank you so much for watching. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.